Hi, I'm Jeff Bermudez.
And I'm Omar Kadri.
Welcome to The Collective Journey.
Join us as we explore some of the most promising talents, thought leaders, and change influencers in our city and beyond.
As we uncover these hidden gems, I hope you'll find that they're people just like you and I, with hopes and dreams and gifts that they would like to show to the world.
It is our mission to share their work, to share their story, and to appreciate what our community is capable of producing.
This is my adventure.
This is your adventure.
This is our collective journey. Welcome to this week's episode. Today we talk about some aspects of life that are not considered very glamorous. We touch upon violence and fighting, physical illness, and depression. Our guest today has been exposed to these realities. Matthew Baleka is a lifelong martial artist, personal trainer, and licensed private investigator. He obviously did not pursue these paths out of coincidence. Instead, these were done in response to challenges he encountered early on. Come and join us for the next half hour as we get to know our latest guest, Matt Baleka.
My name's Matt Baleka. I'm 27 years old. I've worked quite a few jobs. I've worked construction here in London, and I've done martial arts for close to 14 years. I finished my exam and the process for becoming a licensed private investigator, so I'm just waiting on the slow engine that is Service Ontario to send me my license in the mail so I can get really started on things. I've also been a certified personal trainer, and I had a very long battle with depression that I gradually, definitely not overnight, but managed to overcome over the years. And a lot of that was restructuring my life and finding healthy people to have in my life, such as my friends, my girlfriend, and it's got me on the right track now.
You said martial arts? What type of martial arts?
Well, I'll be honest. I started with a Mick dojo out in Woodstock. I won't name the dojo, but it was an American Kempo school. Which, if you know anything about American Kempo and the guy in particular who started it up, I believe his name is Ed Parker. Absolute crazy dude. It's a guy from Hawaii who tried to mix karate, kung fu, and I guess a strange form of interpretive dance into a martial art. But it's a martial art that tries to basically script every scenario that you could possibly go into too heavily. There's not a whole lot of adaptability in it as a martial art. And as a fellow martial artist, as you know, the basics are probably the most important thing you can learn.
Yeah. And
it's just learning how to apply the basics in different circumstances and more than anything, being reactive.
So are we talking like very cooperative demonstrations?
Yes. The kind of stuff where the guy throws a punch that is easily telegraphed and somehow you end up slapping him around 21 times.
Nice.
The other martial arts I did was Muay Thai for a while at Iron Monkey, and a good group of guys out there in Woodstock. I was with them when they just started up, so I did some Muay Thai with them. I trained out in Toronto for quite some time, studying the granddaddy of Muay Thai, known as Muay Baran, which if anyone's seen a Tony Jaa movie, that's essentially what he does, but of course not as awesome as Tony Jaa.
It's like the older version of Muay Thai.
Yeah.
Did they let you use weapons or anything like that?
I did learn a little bit of the weapon system, which is Krabi Kabong. I'm not that good with them.
Okay.
I learned more about weapons when I ended up studying Southern Praying Mantis Kung Fu under a really good teacher here in London. Unfortunately, he's retired from teaching martial arts, but I'm still friends with him, and we still chat regularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What type of weapons did you get to use?
I mostly actually learned how to use the knife fighting style that accompanied Southern Praying Mantis. I did learn a little bit of staff fighting. I've learned Tonfa over the years, nunchucks, but I'll be honest, I hit myself in the face with them more than I hit other people. Yeah. Nunchucks, in my opinion, are not a very practical weapon for anyone out there wondering that. So,
Tonfa would be the thing that resembles a nightstick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a weapon that's employed by different police forces as well in the world. I know at one point they did use them here in North America. I don't think they do anymore. But it's a very versatile weapon. It's very good for self-defense. You can use it for leverage and subduing an attacker or a potential assailant, and it's very good for defending against other weapons too.
Okay. How did you get into martial arts? What was that thing that sparked your interest in that?
Well, probably like a lot of other kids who did. I got beat up a lot as a kid. I grew up in a rough neighborhood in Woodstock, a low-income housing area, and cornfield for a backyard, so lots of country-style brawls that would happen out there. And I had asthma, so I could never run away. I had a hard time with that, so I always, just naturally as a kid, before I even got into my first fist fight, which I was 5 years old when I got into my first one. I just preferred to stand my ground and fight, but obviously against stronger opponents or kids who knew some karate, even though it's not really taught for that purpose to kids, they still know something more than I did, and I'd still sometimes get beat up pretty bad, and I was a little guy back then, so that really motivated me. And watching Jet Li movies. Jet Li was one of my biggest heroes growing up, along with Jackie Chan, and of course my dad introduced me to the classic Bruce Lee movie Enter the Dragon, which really lit the fire in my belly for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wanted to be like Bruce Lee, but
What were some of the movies that you really enjoyed watching, and I guess would inspire you to do martial arts?
I guess the first one that really caught my attention was Who Am I with Jackie Chan, which I think was a 1998 martial arts comedy film. And then after that, I saw Fearless with Jet Li, which kind of reignited my interest. I'd seen the one with Jet Li before that as a kid. And then Unleashed, but I'd say the thing that really got me going hardcore into it, and when I started studying Muay Thai, was when I saw a foreign film called Ombak starring Tony Jaa.
Tony Jaa, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys have seen Tony Jaa, but that guy is just phenomenal. People were saying he was going to be the next Bruce Lee, but I don't think he gained the same amount of traction that Bruce Lee did.
So you were talking about how, as a kid, you were fascinated with martial arts because you were always getting beat up and stuff like that, right?
Of course, I also watched The Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Man, that guy's me.
So, at what point did you kind of start feeling like the turnaround, where it's like now you're starting to become the tough guy, you're starting to become the guy that's like winning the fights?
Honestly, it was before I trained in martial arts. It's when I started going through my freak growth spurts. By the time I was in the 9th grade, I was already 6'1".
Okay.
And I was a little bit stronger than a lot of my peers, but I had a thing happen where I got beat up after school one day, which kind of put me back into realizing, boy, I have a lot of things to learn. There's this guy there, he had a lot of problems. I'm not going to say his name, of course, but I thought he was a friend of mine. We would always talk in art class, and the one day, I was getting ready to walk home, and all of a sudden he and a bunch of guys jump me and tell me I'm fighting him after school. And I kid you not, man, this is like something out of a movie. I got walked down the hallway of my old high school in Woodstock. It's called Huron Park. It had a reputation for being rough. Suddenly I get thrown out into the football field, and I'm surrounded by just this huge crowd of kids that I didn't know was going to be there. And they told me basically I was going to either fight this guy on his terms wearing boxing gloves, or he was going to bare knuckle beat me into submission. So I literally had a pair of boxing gloves taped onto me, and I was told to fight this guy. I didn't know how to box or anything. I had backyard brawls as a kid. I got into ham-fisted fist fights in cornfields, right? Dirty country brawling, not anything. And I will say this guy knew how to box. He was good. He was very quick on his feet, had fast hands. He destroyed me.
Did he ask for it, or did they just see?
They just
want to match you up?
They just he wanted to fight me, and
really?
I kept saying man, I don't really want to do that. So I got forced into it. But I didn't get my revenge on him, not quite in the way that I wanted to. I kind of did in history class, but it was a very quick exchange before the teacher broke us up. But I don't know. He comes in there, and he knew my sister had started school there, and he threatened to go after her.
Okay.
Grabbed him by the back of the head in class and slammed his face into the desk repeatedly until the teacher broke us up. She let me off the hook, actually, because she knew what had gone on there, and she overheard everything. She's a cool lady.
Did you ever do any sports in high school, like wrestle?
No, actually.
Something related to that?
Because of the fact that I struggled with chronic asthma, I actually never got into I wanted to play football, but I couldn't because I was too poor, so I couldn't afford the equipment, and my asthma just wouldn't let me. And then with wrestling, the wrestling program in my high school wasn't really that good, but my parents they got me into, unfortunately, it was American Kempo, but it started the journey.
Yeah.
And that's when I started thinking, like, I want to do Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I want to learn boxing, and I started doing that when I was 18.
So that was how many years into officially starting martial arts formally?
So about a year and a half into starting martial arts, was when that had happened. I'd been in it for about a year and a half at that point, and it was actually about 3 months after that incident with him in the classroom that I decided to switch over to learning Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. And I started going to Iron Monkey when I was 18 years old.
Okay. And did Iron Monkey offer all these classes? Was it just Muay Thai, or did they have?
They had Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing. I started really falling in love with the martial art, and Muay Thai is cool, man. I mean, you got your knees, your elbows. It's to anyone who hasn't seen too much in terms of the Indo-Chinese martial arts, it's a very different way of fighting.
And don't they all kind of have their own? So Thai will have Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And then the Burmese will have Lethwei or something.
Yeah, Lethwei.
And then the Cambodians will have something else. It's called
Prattle Saray.
Prattle Saray, yes.
Yeah,
they all have
Bloodsport
their
is
own
what it
type
is.
of kickboxing.
Yeah, and a lot of it stems from the same ancestor as Muay Thai, which people just call it Muay Baran. There wasn't really too much of a formalized teaching method or name for it back then because it was literally the Siamese Army's military fighting art.
I've heard a few people kind of put kung fu down, making it sound like it's not like that serious of an art, or like people make it sound like it's more useful or more like impactful than it is. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, as somebody who studied kung fu for over 7 years, because I did that actually after Muay Baran. At first, I was really skeptical until a friend of mine literally hit me in the junk and convinced me. It was actually a bet that I lost that caused me to study kung fu.
And kung fu is pretty umbrella. What type of what type of art
more
was
specifically,
I studied Juga Kung Fu, which is Southern Praying Mantis, and I also studied a Korean variant called Shiphalgi. I'm probably not pronouncing that properly, but I studied a Korean variant of the Shaolin arts called Shiphalgi, which was what my teacher really pushed for me in the end. We were predominantly a Praying Mantis Kung Fu school, but what a lot of people don't realize is there is probably 7 different types of Praying Mantis Kung Fu, and there's over 300 types of Kung Fu from China.
Throughout this entire talk, like, you've been just throwing out all these types of fighting styles that I've never even heard of. So sounds like it's very diversified.
There's so many.
There is.
For as long as people knew how to hit each other in the face with parts of their body, there's arts for it.
There is. There's an art for literally just hitting each other in the face. You see that one main, I think it's in Dongfang, or I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, but it's the main Shaolin temple there that you see in every documentary done by Discovery or National Geographic or History Channel. And it's a very beautiful temple, but one thing I noticed there is they predominantly study Kung Fu more in the format of wushu.
Okay.
So it's more for demonstration and show. They're literally putting on shows for tourists. And there's only one Shaolin temple that at least teaches the northern style in China left that teaches it legitimately. It's this very small temple up in the northern mountains there. I think there was a show on Discovery that went there called Fight Quest. There's also a guy who was an Anglican priest who, you can find his videos on YouTube. He ended up going and staying in a Shaolin temple, and he ended up going from that main one to that tiny one in the mountains because, as he put it, it was just way too about the image and kind of being out there for the cameras for that one temple, and he wanted to go find something much more realistic.
Since we're on the topic of practical application, have there been a lot of situations where you've had to put what you've learned, your skills to the test? Have you ever, let's say, competed in any competitions, or have you ever been in a street fight that required you to use these techniques?
Well, I can't say I've been in competition. I have been in street fights. I'm not too proud of some of them, but I'll talk about it. There was one in particular that really comes to mind when I was in Woodstock. It was just before I was actually supposed to start police foundations at Fanshawe College. And it was my last night, back in my hometown. And there used to be this bar there called Good Time Charlie's. I was actually going to go pick up a friend of mine there. She kind of got into a bad situation, and she called me. She has kids at home, and she just wanted to get back home. And there's these guys kind of creating trouble, and her friends weren't being too smart and were wanting to go off with a group of guys she didn't know. And she's like, "Hey, can you come pick me up and just take me back home?" So I said, okay. So I parked out by the fountain in the museum square, and I was walking out, and actually this guy that I was friends with in high school suddenly gets dragged out of the bar by this group of 5 guys. And I called 911 immediately. And started telling him what was going on. They dragged him across the road to a coffee culture, threw him up against a railing, and started beating him. While I was on the phone with them, I was saying, you guys are going to have to send the cops and an ambulance. They suddenly threw him down to the ground. He cracked the back of his skull open and just went limp. And they just kept beating him. And so I told her what was happening and that I was running off. She told me to be careful, and that was it. It seemed like forever before anyone got there. So I ran up and I fought them off. I mean, I could go into more detail if you guys want, but long story short, I got a little bit bruised, a little bit scratched up, but there were some guys walking out of there with broken bones. And people were getting pepper sprayed. The cops showed up. A security guard accidentally got pepper sprayed by the cops. I almost did. I almost got arrested because I was actually trying to help them out. And at one point, a guy tried to take a broken beer bottle that he brought out there with him, and he tried to get one of the cops in the back of the neck while he was arresting one of the guys involved. And I took him down to the ground and almost got arrested for it. So to let you know, like, sometimes the cops are not so bad, because once they realized that I helped them out, they let me go off the hook.
What happened to this guy that got beat up then?
He ended up actually having to be airlifted here to London and had surgery done at Victoria Hospital. Actually, what year would have this been? This was about 5 years ago. If you look up, Good Time Charlie's bar fight in Woodstock on Google, you'll actually find the article about this. I didn't make my way into the article, but this guy, of course, did. He survived.
Okay.
But he had to have some cranial surgery done here at Victoria Hospital. And, I'm glad he's okay.
And he's perfectly fine now.
To my knowledge, he is. I actually have never seen him again since then, and I followed the news to make sure he was all right. Talked to some mutual friends, and they said, yeah, he made a full recovery. He's, not going to be quite the same after what happened, but there's other guys that I've known who have had far worse happen to them. And
Okay.
like permanent brain damage and injury, terrible stuff.
So this wasn't like a friend of yours. It was just someone that
He was an
knew.
acquaintance that I knew in high
okay.
school. Yeah, really nice guy. He really, whatever it was, I don't think he could have done anything to deserve what was happening to him. It was just some guys who just, I guess they decided their pride was more important than this guy's life, and they took him out. And
Now that you're at this age, if you were to be in that situation again, how would you have handled it differently?
that's a really good question. To be honest, given the environment, the circumstance, and just what happens with mob mentality when somebody's in that position, I would have done the same thing. I walked right through the crowd of guys, and I punched the first guy out that I could, and I just kept going.
So basically, no regrets.
No regrets, no. I'll never regret helping out somebody who needs it. I hope somebody would be willing to do that for me, right? And it's not a matter of like, oh, I'm going to be this really great guy. And, anybody who says, that kind of stuff, they're full of shit.
Mm-hmm.
When you do it, it's because in that moment, you are absolutely shocked and appalled that this is happening to somebody. And you got to think to yourself, okay, if I was having this happen to me, I would absolutely hope somebody comes along and saves me. I hate that in this day and age we have people who just will sit on their cell phones and they'll watch while a guy beats his wife on the street, or while somebody's getting mugged or attacked. They just got their phones. Oh, I'm recording it for posterity. Well, that's good. A lot of good your posterity is going to do when this guy's in the hospital or he's being buried by his family. Which is interesting because there's a lot of people who they're like, oh, you shouldn't study martial arts, you shouldn't be practicing violence. But the problem is that there's always going to be somebody who's going to take a weapon or take what they know, and they're going to use it anyway. What's important is making sure that the people with the right tools are in place to stop the wrong people with those tools in their place, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what your story reminds me of? It reminds me a bit of Boss Rutan. You know Boss Rutan.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Of course, right? Well, he grew up with asthma as well.
Yep.
And he was sickly and was getting bullied too and losing fights when he was younger. And then he becomes this like kickboxing phenomenon.
He's an absolute...
And he's an icon now.
Yeah, and he was heavyweight champion in the UFC as
In the UFC, yeah.
Yeah. And of course he's
Pancrase.
the one who Pancrase.
Yeah.
His system works though. He's a brilliant fighter. And he's definitely an inspiration for me because of the fact that he had asthma. Same with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson also had asthma and really severe asthma. And look at him. Sure he might have nibbled a few years, but
Yeah.
He's got a reputation, but you can't take away the fact that the guy is a phenomenal fighter.
So you've talked a lot about your experience practicing martial arts. You did mention that you also were a trainer.
Yes, I did personal training. I certified with CanFit Pro in 2012. So I was in I think it was about 2021 back then. Not really thinking of the numbers right now. But yeah, I was a personal trainer with CanFit Pro. I had my own personal training business in Woodstock for a bit. I ran out of an office, actually, that I shared with my dad and his coworker. And I specialized predominantly in fitness training, strength training, and weight loss. So weight loss is really not that hard. It's just getting into the mindset that's the hard part.
Was it anything you ever had to deal with growing up? Or were you always like a rather skinny guy?
Yeah, I've always been relatively fit until I was about 18 or 19. I developed some pretty bad habits when I had money to throw around. And, I wasn't managing my stress well. And at the time, I didn't realize I was actually struggling with clinical depression either. I went undiagnosed for almost 10 years. And that's how long my psychiatrist figured I was dealing with it for. But I used to have this really bad habit of going to Sobeys in Woodstock and buying a bag of Lay's chips. And, those big party-sized bags of M&Ms? I'd eat the whole thing in an afternoon. Oh, yeah, I got chubby. I went from weighing a relatively lean 175 to being almost 200 pounds of pure sugar and starch.
At what height?
At that time, I was 6'1".
6'1", okay.
Yeah, and I had, like the skinny arms with the fat belly. Everyone thought I had a beer belly. It's like, no, this is just lots of powdered sugar donuts, M&Ms, and Lay's. Which, by the way, if you do want a really good confection just for that odd cheat day, Lay's and M&M's together is a really great combo.
In the same bowl.
In the same bowl, man. Like, make a sandwich with that shit.
Sweet and salty. So how did you kind of get out of that and get back into being fit?
I actually have to give my mom a lot of credit for that. She was at one point a Weight Watchers coach, and she was working out, and she wasn't like ripped or anything, but she was in good shape. And it kind of was a wake up call because I had a girlfriend at the time. It was my first one, and I wanted to get muscular and shit, and and I was like, I'm gonna go to the gym. And I was working for a pizza shop at the time, and they made it too easy to get fat because I was bringing home extra large pizzas every night for $5 or free.
Yeah.
I mean, Thamesford Pizza made mean pizza. Let me tell you guys, it's a shameless plug right there. But I decided to go to the gym, and it was actually when I looked in the mirror and stepped on the scale, and I'm like, gained 30 pounds? I went from 168 to 198 or 170 up to that point. And it kind of was a wake up, and I almost puked during my first workout. And I went to my mom and I told her, and she's just like, well, Matt, you have kind of put on a little weight. You're a little chubby. I wouldn't say you're fat, but I'm like, I got to do something. I want to do martial arts and I want to be this and that. I got to get in shape. So.
But you had already been doing martial arts at this point.
But I was eating so much, man. It didn't matter. I was way out of a caloric deficit, man. I was in a surplus times 10.
So did she help you with meal plans and managing your macros?
She kind of helped me learn how to start managing my bad habits. And I got down to about 185. Okay. But it wasn't enough. I was starting to really get into I want to get really strong. I was like, man, I want to be able to bench press over 200 pounds. I can only bench press 135. And that's not a bad starting point for a kid. But I was like, man, I want to be so much stronger. I want to be built like goddamn Goku from Dragon Ball Z, man. That was one of my favorite shows as a kid too, right? And it's like, I wanted to be jacked. And I finally was like, I have the money and the tools at my disposal, and yet here I am, still this fat kid playing Halo in his basement every weekend, Which, by the way, Halo was a lot of fun. I'm not knocking it.
Yeah, I'm sure you could still play it, after the workout.
Oh, yeah. I did, believe me, but I had to earn that. So I met there was a friend of my parents who I knew ever since I was 7 years old in Woodstock. He was a pharmacist, a personal trainer, and a nutritionist. And he had his own pharmacy that he also opened up a shop in there where he was selling really high-grade precision supplements. I think actually the guy who owns Precision has done a few talks here at Western University. He's a really smart man. It's a Canadian-owned company. But yeah, he started getting me really into diet and exercise. He kind of put me on a simple 5-day-a-week strength and power building program. And he's like, yeah, man, you just got to start eating, bulk up, and then cut down. And so I did that, and I got back up to over 190 pounds, and I ended up cutting down to 160 at one point and got too skinny. But I was ripped, but being a skinny guy with abs is not that impressive.
So where would you put your weight at now? Would you consider yourself in a good spot?
I'm in a good spot now, but I'm not happy. I'm always pushing for more. I've started a 6-day-a-week bodybuilding split that I actually got from I decided to finally move from just doing strength and power training to bodybuilding. I'm cutting down right now just because I want to have a lower body fat percentage. Like, as you can tell, I'm not fat at all, but I'm actually 6'3" now. I went through a freak growth spurt when I was 23.
Okay.
I'm 6'3" now and 225 pounds. And I'm way leaner than I was when I was 6'1", 190 pounds. So,
dealing with that, with weight loss and doing the martial arts training, obviously there are physical benefits to it. But how did you figure that aided you in, I guess, your mental struggles as well? Because you mentioned you were diagnosed with depression, right?
Man, you guys ask really awesome questions. To be honest, it played a huge role. The biggest thing for me, though, that I'd have to say was that I didn't talk to someone soon enough. And again, not to think that there's like that I have all the wisdom in the world or anything, because I really don't. I'm still learning a lot of stuff. My father was a family counselor and a therapist for over 20 years, and I mean, I thought I would have learned a lot from him, but it turns out I was really good at listening to what he had to say, but not applying it. But I'll say to anybody listening out there, who could be listening to this, if you're going through some, feeling depressed, and like depression isn't, no, you're not crying every day. You don't necessarily want to kill yourself. I mean, I wanted to kill myself a few times, and I tried, and I just wasn't very good at it because I'm obviously still here.
Yeah.
I would have to say that, again, not to kind of go on that stereotypical rant, but talking to someone is really important. And yeah, doing martial arts helps. It gives you, when you have something you're striving towards, it gives you a reason to get out of bed. And that's the hardest thing when you've got clinical depression, is getting out of bed. Your body just feels like it weighs 100 pounds more than it actually does when you wake up every morning. And it's hard to drag yourself out. You find all these reasons to tell yourself you should just stay in, you shouldn't go out. You tell yourself people are better off without you. You tell yourself, like, oh, I can wait till tomorrow. But when you train in martial arts, you kind of start to get this mindset of, well, no, it doesn't wait till tomorrow. I have to go every day, and I've got to try. I've got to train.
Yeah.
There's other people moving ahead of me that I want to keep up with. And, any class I miss, I'm falling behind those people. So that helped a lot, but it really, the thing that really didn't get me out of my depression, though, I'll be honest.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the show. That's all the time that we have for this week. But join us again next episode as we conclude our conversation with this week's guest. If you or somebody you know would like to be on the show, hit us up on any of our social media. We are Collective Journey on Facebook. We are Collective Journey on YouTube. We are Collective_Journey on Instagram. And always remember, this is not just my adventure, but it's yours as well. This is our collective journey.